Foundation is quite possibly the most chillaxy city builder that I have played yet, and it's not even done. It went into early access in February of 2019 and it is still very much in early access, so much so that the devs are calling it an alpha still. But there is already more than enough to allow you to make a decision as to whether or not this is the next and big city builder for you. This is my analysis of the Foundation early access circa September 2020. The way I see it, there are four major things that need to be addressed when talking about Foundation. We must talk about the gridlessness, the customizable monument type buildings, the assigning or painting of activity areas, and last but not least, the super chillaxy nature of the game. One of the main selling points of the game and of its crowdfunding campaign was that Foundation will be a gridless city building experience. It would allow you to grow your village in an organic sort of way, unrestricted by what has traditionally been a very strictly grid-based design philosophy. And boy, does it deliver. Playing Foundation and steadily growing your settlement from the couple of producing buildings and houses to expanding into creating separate industrial and residential areas will give you a much better understanding why a lot of Central and Eastern European towns that are older than, let's say, 500 years have very narrow, twisty, turny roads. This organic approach is reflected in the freedom you have when placing your buildings, the customizability of your monuments, the automated path creation, and the area assignment. Buildings can be spun around 360 degrees, offering you complete freedom as to in which way to place them. Some other older games, such as Banished or Depraved, allow for the same range but generally limited you to certain angles, and you are also generally pushed into organizing things in a grid pattern anyway by virtue of how the buildings were designed. In Foundation, you can literally bunch up buildings insanely close one to another because their shapes differ a lot, and your people will generally find a way in and out as long as you pay attention where the tiny green arrows point while you're placing it. Roads or pathways in Foundation are self-generated by your population going to and from their business. This means that you don't have to pay anything to have them built, nor pay any particular sort of attention to where you're building them, but that doesn't mean that you can just forget about them. There are at least two ways in which these self-generating roads both influence your urban planning and can be influenced by it in turn. In the first case, your people will have to travel from their home to work and back, and then to get themselves food, things, and to church. This will create the paths they will mostly use, and the distances between these various focal points come into play later on when we'll talk about the activity areas. The way in which you can sort of influence where your people will walk is to assign no access areas, just in case you have a very particular and clear idea of how you wish to develop your city. The customizable monument type buildings were the second major selling point of the game. And I have to say that Foundation doesn't disappoint here either. Being able to customize the initial makeup of your monument buildings, as well as to constantly add to them new parts and to customize the height of those parts, not only makes for some really kooky, weird looking buildings if, like me, you are interested in seeing how everything looks, not necessarily making it pretty, but this also offers a level of depth to the gameplay that isn't apparent from the get-go, because each new main part of the monument buildings can be assigned to a particular duty. As such, if you'll want to increase your treasury space, for instance, you'll need to assign the new parts of your town hall to treasury duties. As you develop your settlement, you will gain the ability of promoting your people to higher status levels, thus unlocking further types of buildings, which makes sense. It is a very general type of city building mechanic. However, what isn't is the Estates tab and Splendor ratings. The Estates tab is where you'll see what I can only describe as a sort of faction reputation window, where you have three factions: the king, the clergy, and the people, and your sort of reputation with them. What does this have to do with anything? Well, it does seem like a tacked on feature, but it is something that spurs you on to both build things as well as make the things pretty, because your reputation is one resource while the splendor relevant to each faction is a different one altogether. Your reputation is improved when you send various resources to the various factions via a sort of quests, and the splendor rating is improved once you add decorations to the buildings which represent each faction. Once you have a certain number of particular high status people, as well as the required reputation and splendor, you can unlock some different buildings from the Estates tab. I mentioned assigning activity areas several times, so what is it that I'm talking about? This is yet another very interesting feature that Foundation comes with. Instead of production buildings having a set range of action, you decide which areas your production buildings should work in. These can be forested areas, places where there are stones, or berry patches. You will also paint areas for your wheat farms, hop plantations, and grape orchards, but more importantly, you will need to assign residential areas for your people to, live in. Housing is built automatically by your people when they need it, assuming you have the materials available. This will depend on the distance from their workplace as well as the presence of available assigned residential areas. These residential areas have different levels of desirability depending on their surroundings. Generally, being near most types of production buildings will decrease the desirability of that area. This effect will be shown when preparing to place the buildings. If they will have a negative effect on the desirability of an area, they will have a red circle around them, showing the range which they will affect. If they have a positive effect, the circle will be green. You can improve the desirability of areas by placing lots of decorative things, but your best bet is to keep your industry away from your housing, which you can do with some careful area painting and planning. Foundation has been by far the most relaxing city builder that I have yet had the pleasure of playing. This is due to several reasons. First of all, it's pretty laid back, lacking any real survival type elements in the vein of Banished, which is the game that Foundation is most easily comparable with. It has some periods of time which I call hurricane season, when it rains abundantly and your crops and berries yields reduce, but that's about it, at least for now. The main challenge of the game resides in managing your resources and your people's happiness, and that is easier said than done, especially when you, like an idiot, promote way too many people at the same time, because their requirements increase alongside their status, which makes sense also much like in the anno titles. So even if you're doing well now, but you abruptly promote, let's say, 20 people to a higher status and you do not have the required materials to make them happy, you're gonna have issues. And maintaining a high level of happiness is important because that's how you will be attracting new villagers. So that is your most crucial stat to keep an eye on and build everything around, more so than money. The second reason for the game being Chillaxy is the soothing and low-key music. There's very little I can say about it other than it doesn't get boring even when you can tell it has looped. It's just nice and soothing and perfect for the background. The final reason why I consider the game to be super chillaxy is the gentle swaying of the grass, trees and crops in the wind. This isn't as noticeable at the lowest speed, but once you increase it to 3, the maximum, you can easily see the sway and it is almost hypnotic, I feel. Likewise, the many activity animations are simply great. One of my favorite things to do in city builders is to watch my tiny people go about their day and watch them do their jobs, and there are lots of those animations to be enjoyed in the game. Foundation also comes with mod support. I have not looked into what the mod scene has to offer since I haven't really gotten through the entirety of the base game yet, but I will be sure to check back with you once I've tried some mods as well. Despite my rather glowing review, this is still in early access, and that means there are quite a few things that can and should be improved upon. Which I'm sure will be, since it doesn't look like the devs are planning to get to final release form anytime soon. I would like the ability of enhancing most of the production buildings, instead of having to build multiple ones. At least 2 more levels of growth for each seems to be something that could be introduced into the game. Obviously, you'd have to pay for the access to these upgrades from the Estates tab, but it will improve the experience, I think, especially for those players who want super duper compact villages. It needs to allow you to directly assign particular individuals to certain workplaces. You can do this for a limited amount of time, but the list of available people is limited, and once you get beyond certain numbers, it is pretty much unusable. One workaround I found was to make them unemployed and then filter the new production building to show you only the unemployed and assign them that way. The final version I think would need some more varied flora and fauna as well, a day-night cycle, and obviously seasons. although mods probably have added some of those. I do not know because, like I said earlier, I didn't have enough time to get into the mod scene as well, and after all, this is a preview video. Oh yeah, one personal type thing I'd like them to fix or modify is to make the goddamn models blink, because this is some terrifying serial murder type shit. It's very unnerving. Also, personally, I'd like for the game to gain some survival elements at a certain point in the vein of Banished, or, you know, have the option to toggle those on or off. I don't know if this is planned by the devs, but I'm pretty sure that it will get modded in sooner or later regardless. Basically, it's just a matter of time till Foundation reaches a higher level of polish, but until then, it is definitely worth getting in on the action if you love city builders, because you will not regret getting it sooner rather than later. No nonsense seal of approval yet, those are reserved for fully released games, but I have zero qualms about suggesting you get into the early access. Hey there dear watcher who's still watching, thank you very much for sticking around. I've recently started a Patreon page, so if you want to and can throw a couple of bucks my way to help me get more games and improve my recording setup, go on there and check out the tiers and rewards. If you can do that but still want to help me grow my channel, please consider subscribing, turning on the notification bell, and of course sharing the video far and wide. I've been Steven Ansens, thank you very much for watching, see you next time and have a great rest of the day.